Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to our presentation today. My name is Katie Kosis. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at Niagara University. And what we're going to cover today is an overview of the FAFSA filing process, as well as what to expect when you start to receive your financial aid packages. I'm sharing my screen now. So let's there's my contact information. If you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. There's my email. You can also email our general financial aid email at finaid, FINAID, at niagara.edu. Or, of course, give us a call, and that is our main line. And any one of my team members would be happy to assist you with any questions you may have as you go through that FAFSA process. So the first step in really receiving any type of financial aid above and beyond, maybe merit scholarships that the school provides, would be to complete your FAFSA. So the first thing to do to kind of get started for this is to apply for your FSA ID. You can do that at fsaid.ed.gov. You are going to need one for the student and one for at least one of the parents. Now, both parents don't need to have one in order to sign up on the FAFSA. Only one parent has to sign up on the FAFSA form. We do recommend at some point maybe both parents getting one, just so that when you do go ahead and maybe apply for a Parent Plus loan, we'll get to that in a little bit, that's already set up for you. And these FSA IDs are really your signatures, your electronic signatures for the FAFSA, and any other federal forms that you might need to complete down the line. One hint I can give you is to please make sure that you are using separate email addresses when you're setting these up. So one for the student and one for at least one of the parents, and please use separate email addresses. If you try to use the same one, I believe it will let you process it through, but it will mess everything up as you try to verify the email and verify the ID name and password. So be sure to use those separate email addresses. When you go to the site, this is what you will see. And it will ask you to create your new FSA ID. If you from a prior student, perhaps, as a parent, then you would keep that. Just your incoming student would need their own. But once you have your FSA ID set up, and you can do that anytime, recommend getting that done before you start the FAFSA, but you can do it again anytime. Even when you're in the FAFSA completing it, you can actually sign up for one as well. What we're going to go over now is the FAFSA on the web worksheet. And this will be sent around as well, and links on our website. But the FAFSA on the web worksheet is pretty much a guide for all the questions you're going to have to answer when you do start filling out the FAFSA. The FAFSA is completed online. You can do it by paper, but I don't recommend going that way unless you absolutely have to. If you process it online, it only takes a couple of days to go through, versus if you send it in by mail with the paper version, it can take up to a month sometimes, depending upon processing time. So please try to do it online if you can. Don't mail in this worksheet. It is just a guide. If you are going to be if you're currently a senior in high school and you're going to be starting college in fall of 2021, you're going to need to fill out the 21-22 FAFSA form. Please be careful when you go onto the FAFSA website, because currently there are 2 years out there that you have the option of completing. There's the 2021 year and the 21-22 year. So please be careful when doing this. I know people can sometimes get confused because you're thinking, oh, we're in 2020 right now, so I should be filling out the other one. But actually it's for when you'll be entering college. So again, if you're a current senior right now, please make sure you're filling out the 21-22 FAFSA for the fall 21 start term. The first part of the worksheet that we'll go through and that you would have to put in when you start filling out the FAFSA is the student information. So the FAFSA, which stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Assistance, is the student's FAFSA. It is in the student's name. So please be careful when you're going in and completing all of this, that you're not mixing up names and ID numbers and whatnot. It is the student's information. So the student would have to put in, basic information, first name, last name, their social security number. I also caution on this because oftentimes we do see wrong socials. Either the parent maybe put in a combination of 2 siblings or maybe their own. So just make sure you're paying close attention when you're completing this step. It's also going to ask the citizenship of the student. In order to be eligible for the FAFSA form, you do have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, such as a permanent resident or something like that. So make sure you're checking those boxes off. It's also going to ask the marital status of the student. Now, most times coming out of high school, they are single. And wouldn't have to answer the other ones. On with the student information, there is a selective service component of this. So if you are a male student above the age of, or 18 or above, you do have to sign up for the selective service in order to be eligible for any federal aid. It is the current rule. I know there have been discussions, at the federal level of, not mandating this provision, but as it stands right now, it is a requirement. So in order for male students to be eligible for federal financial aid, you do have to complete or sign up for the selective service. If you're only 17 at the time, it will give you the option of, sign me up when I turn 18, or you can go back and sign up later. So perhaps your first year, you won't have to worry about this, but as soon as you hit 18 for that following academic year, you would have to register for the selective service. It's going to ask some information about your parents, parent 1 or parent 2, with the highest level of education they completed. You'll notice the wording here, parent 1 and parent 2. So it's not mother, it's not father. Please make sure that you are maintaining who is parent 1 and who is parent 2 all the way through the FAFSA. It can get easy to kind of mix up, put in parent 1's income information, parent 2, but you really need to be consistent as you're going forward with the FAFSA. It's then going to ask some questions about the dependency status of the student. So a student is considered a dependent student, meaning that they would have to provide parental information on their FAFSA unless they meet one of these criteria. So if they were born before, in this case, January 1st of 1998, if they're married, if they have children or other dependents, if they're legal guardianship, if they're at risk of being homeless, if they're in the armed services. So typically, again, students coming out from high school don't really fit into a lot of these criteria, perhaps maybe the legal guardianship or the homelessness, or depending, ward of the court. So again, most times this would, you would not be able to check any of these boxes for the student. If the student, you are able to check any one of those boxes, just know that in cases of like legal guardianship or emancipation, something like that, the schools you're applying to will most likely ask for additional documentation, because unfortunately, sometimes students, check out these boxes not understanding exactly what it means or thinking that they meet it and they don't. So the schools will typically ask for additional documentation just to prove that you are an independent student and don't need your parental information to be put into the FAFSA. But again, most cases, students coming out of high school, you will be considered a dependent student, which means you do have to provide parental information. I get asked a lot is, okay, I'm a dependent student, but which parent do I report? Well, if your parents are married, or if they're unmarried but living together in the same household, you would report both parents. So both parents would be reported in the household, and both of their incomes would be included in the income section. If your parents are divorced, you would report whoever you live with more than 50% of the year with. So if you live with, parent 1, let's say mom, for more than 50% of the year, you report her information. If for some cases, I know although we have 365 days out of the year, and technically you can't, one's not 50-50, for court orders or something where it does say it has to be split evenly, you would then go with whichever parent provides the most financial support to the student for the prior 12 months. So again, it's whoever either the student lives with more than 50% of the year with. If it is 50-50 for some reason, you would then go with whoever provides the most financial support. And financial support can also include such things as, health insurance. Whose health insurance are you on? So those are the things you kind of need to take into consideration. Another thing to remember is in the cases of divorce, let's say you live with, parent 1, let's say mom, and mom is remarried and you have a stepdad. You will have to report stepdad's information on the FAFSA as well. Both he would have to be counted in the household, and also his income information would have to be reported as well. So those are the questions I get asked a lot, but that would be who you report if you are in a divorce situation. Let you know which parents are reporting on the FAFSA, and then we'll go into parental information. It will ask you to provide social security number, date of birth, name for both parent 1 and parent 2, if you have both parents to report. It will also then start asking about tax information. So it'll say, did your parents file a 2019 tax return? So some things to keep in mind. You're filling out the 21-22 FAFSA if you're starting in fall of 21. But on that FAFSA, the income information you report is actually 2019 tax information. So hopefully by now everyone has their 2019 taxes done, or you have an extension that you could put in there. But if you have those taxes done, you'll be able to use that information when completing the FAFSA. one of the really nice features, we'll get on that just in the next couple slides, is to use the data retrieval tool. So if you have your 2019 taxes completed, you do have the ability, in most cases, to be able to use the data retrieval tool, which actually takes the information directly from the IRS and puts it right into your FAFSA form. So we highly encourage everyone to use this if they have that ability, as it will cut down on, it lessens the chance of having any errors on your FAFSA. So either if you use the data retrieval tool, or if you are unable to, you would have to then put in the income information, just a gross income for the parent. We're going to go break down into, how much did parent one earn for their wages, and then how much did parent two earn for their wages. So you do have to separate those out. So even though on the data retrieval tool, it does bring over like adjusted gross income, taxes paid, education credits, it doesn't bring over or doesn't break apart the wages. So you do have to do that manually. So you would need the 2019 W-2s as well. It's going to then also ask if in either 2019 or 2020, anybody in the household received, Medicaid, SSI, SNAP benefits, free or reduced lunch, TANF, WIC, any one of those things, whether it's in the 2019 year or the current 2020 year, if you received any one of those things, you would check those boxes. Then also going to ask if you paid any child support, if you had any combat pay, potentially for veterans or active duty members in the audience, untaxed income as well. If you received any child support money, you'd have to report that on the FAFSA. It's also going to ask if you contributed anything towards your 401k. Now, it's not asking for the total amount of your 401k. You don't report that, but if you did contribute anything towards it in the 2019 year, you would report that amount. And that amount can be found on your 2019 W-2 form. It's box 12, and then there's specific codes in box 12 that you would use. One of the nice things about the online FAFSA is that there's help boxes all over the place. So if you get stuck on a question, you can kind of hover over a little bit, and it'll tell you exactly what form to be using, what line to be using from your tax returns and your W-2s. So it is something that's really nice about the online FAFSA. So based upon all that information that was put in for the parental information, you may then be asked to provide information about assets. You might not. It kind of just depends on the information you previously put in. There's a lot of skip logic involved in the FAFSA, so not everyone is asked every single question. A lot of it's based upon previous answers that you already responded to. In addition to filling out income information, the FAFSA will also ask how many people are in the household, parents and siblings. It also will then ask the number of people that are in college during the upcoming academic year. So if you have any siblings, you would report yourself and then any other siblings who are in college at the same time. But parents, if you happen to be in college at the same time your student's going to be in college, you cannot count yourselves as being in college on their FAFSA form. Your FAFSA form you can, but not on theirs. So that's something to keep in mind as you are going throughout, the FAFSA process. So if you are asked about, all information is based upon current year information. So this kind of goes back to keeping all the years straight. Filling out the 21-22 FAFSA is based upon 2019 tax information, but the asset questions are based upon what's happening right now. Like as on the day you're filling out the FAFSA, what do your assets look like? Your assets would include cash, savings, checking accounts, net worth of other investments like stocks and bonds, again, not your 401k. And then if you have a business or investment firm, what would be the net worth of that? So those are the things that you might be asked if you will be asked if you are asked to complete the asset question of the FAFSA. All the parent information, it then goes into the student information. So pretty much all those questions you just answered about the parent, you're going to answer about the student. So did the student file taxes? Again, it's from 2019. They might not have been working. So if they didn't work, you would just say, not going to file. Or perhaps you did file or you did work, but you didn't earn enough to file. You would just say you're not going to file, but you would report whatever you made in the wages section. Again, all the same questions. AGI, taxes paid, wages from the W-2s. It's also going to ask about, again, if the student received, Medicaid, SSI, free reduced lunch, or anybody in the family. So again, all those same questions that were asked of the parent are now being asked of the student. And again, most times students that are coming out of high school don't have any of these are not able to say yes to anything. They're not paying child support, they're not receiving child support, they don't have any contributions to a 401k. So most times, there's nothing for students to report, but they are also asked these questions. They're also going to be potentially asked the same asset questions as well that the parents were asked. So again, cash, savings, checkings, and typically they don't have any stocks or bonds or businesses. So that's the basic information you are going to need in order to fill out your FAFSA. So you really need to have those, 2019 taxes with you, your W-2s with you, just so you have those prepared for when you do go to complete the FAFSA form. So when you go onto the FAFSA website, you can either go to FAFSA.ed.gov or to studentaid.ed.gov. They both take you to the same place. They both direct you. So if you've never been to the FAFSA website before, you're going to click on the new section where it says Start Here, or correction or something. So when you go and get to the login page, it's just going to ask you, are you the student or are you the parent or preparer? And really the only difference in this is that it's just going to be based upon how the questions are presented to you. So if you say I'm the student, it will present the questions, as if, okay, what is your information? What is your parent's information? Whereas if you click on I'm the parent, it'll say, what is the student's information? What is your information? So again, just doesn't particularly make that big of a difference. It's just how the questions will be presented based upon how you I touched briefly on the IRS data retrieval tool just a little bit ago. Again, it is available for both the parent and the student to use if they filed 2019 taxes. There are a couple instances of where you're not able to use the data retrieval tool. In the case of if your parents are married but file separately, you will not be able to use the data retrieval tool. And sometimes with identity theft, you're not able to use the data retrieval tool. So, but for the most time, you are able to use this. It is available to use now. It started October 1st, 2020. So when the FAFSA opened at the same time, you're able to use that. Again, we highly recommend that you use this. And the reason for that is because it really, one, allows that there to be as much correct information as possible on the FAFSA, which would allow us to, put together a more accurate financial aid package for you. If you are selected for the verification process, which about 20-25% of students are selected every year for this process. And what that process is that the federal government, randomly selects based upon their algorithms, a certain percentage of their population in order for the verification process. And then this means that the schools then have to verify all the information on the FAFSA to make sure that it's correct, which typically means that we will need to collect some additional information from you. If you use the data retrieval tool, that's one less thing that we have to ask for. We don't have to ask for copies of your taxes. So again, highly recommend that you use this. One thing to note is that when you do use the data retrieval tool, so it does take you out to the IRS site to confirm some information there, and then transfers the information back into your FAFSA. Is that you actually can't see the information that's being put on. It's for security purposes. So although you're saying yes, that all these things, it's just a gross income, taxes paid, education credits, I want these all to be transferred over. It won't let you actually see what's being transferred over. It's just going to kind of have it, blanked out, and it'll say, congratulations, it's been transferred. You just have to trust that it's, pulling everything correctly. And it is, financial aided administrators are able to see that information on our side. So it is coming through, it is accurate. We've done it ourselves, when we do test FAFSAs for our own purposes. So it is working. You won't be able to see it, again, for security purposes, but just know that it is working, and we do recommend that you use it. After you complete the FAFSA, you're actually going to receive what we call a STAR report, or student aid report. We have lots and lots of acronyms in financial aid. You're going to get used to them, I promise. But most times you'll actually just receive an email version of this. If you have a valid email address on file that you put on into the FAFSA, this will be emailed. And pretty much what it is just a recap of all the information you put into all the answers you put into the FAFSA. Some additional information to kind of look at that you will see on the student aid report is it will give you a data release number up here on the right hand side up top. DRI number. In this case, it's a 4-digit number that really allows schools to be able to look into the FAFSA if they're not listed. And we'll get to that in 1 second. But it's an important number to keep track of. DRI number, that's what they're talking about. Thing to really keep in mind and to pay attention to is your expected family contribution, or your EFC. In this case, it is a 0 EFC. But this is the number that financial aid offices use to put together financial aid packages for you. So it is a standard number calculation that is based upon all the information you put into the FAFSA: number in household, number in college, income, assets for both parent and student. All that information goes through the federal processor, and they compute this standard number. And then there's also, in this particular case, there's an asterisk. That means that your FAFSA has been selected for verification. Again, and if you are selected for verification, schools will be asking for additional information for you to provide in order for us to complete your financial aid processing. And then in this case, there's also a C code. And C codes are great. It means, so there's a conflict of sorts that we have to resolve. Typically, it's either due to, a selective service registration that hasn't happened yet, perhaps a citizenship issue that can't be confirmed, defaulted loans. Those are typically for, graduate students or returning students. But yeah, so if you see a C code on your SAR report, just know that you are either have to go back into the FAFSA and fix something, or you might have to provide some additional documentation to the financial aid office. If you don't have a valid email on file, this will be mailed to you to the home address that you listed on your FAFSA. On the FAFSA, before you get to the end, it will you are able to list up to 10 schools on the FAFSA form. So I know that some students apply to many schools. So if you are applying to more than 10 schools, it's perfectly fine. But what I recommend, so you can only do 10 at a time. So when you complete your FAFSA for the first time, you're going to list those 10 schools, up to 10 schools. You're going to want to wait about a week for it to process, and then go back in, take some schools off, and then add some other schools back on. But you really need to be keeping track of what schools you're taking off and what schools you're adding. Because if you end up going to a school that you took off of the FAFSA, they're no longer going to be getting any updates. So you really need to make sure that you're keeping track. And if you decide to go to a school later down the road, that you add that school back onto your FAFSA. Each school will receive the FAFSA electronically within about 3 to 5 business days. Sometimes it only takes a couple of days. Sometimes it takes, full 5. If there's a weekend in there, or maybe a holiday, or if there's just a lot of processing going on during that time. So the schools will receive it. It's not automatic. You don't receive it just instantly. It takes about 3 to 5 days, again, business days to go through. And then once the schools do receive your financial aid or your FAFSA form, they will start, if you've been accepted to that school, we will start putting together financial aid packages for you. So you will see a range of when award letters are sent out. Some might be sent out as early as, late November, December, but typically a good chunk are sent out, January, February, March. It really just depends on the school. It depends what their processes are. I highly recommend contacting the schools you're applying to just to find out what that timeline is. Here at Niagara, we will start sending out financial aid packages for the upcoming year right after we get back from our Christmas break. So like that second week of January, we're going to get things rolling and things will be sent out in the mail. And also you will have access, although you get a mailed copy, you only get one mailed copy, you will also have access to your online portal where you can view your financial aid at any time. So again, kind of keep an eye out for that, but don't panic if you receive, one package from a school in November, but nothing else in, for a couple months. And that's just, again, timing of each school and up to them for their own processing. Okay, so now that I went through the FAFSA process, if you have any questions as you're going through this, please feel free to reach out to us. I know we'll be hosting several sessions that allow for Q&A, or again, if you just need to contact us, we can certainly set something up to go over any of your questions that you have about the FAFSA. So now that we got through that, I actually want to go through and give you an overview of the things that you're going to see and the terms you're going to hear as you go throughout this whole financial aid process. Sometimes in our world, we're so used to all the acronyms and what they mean that we forget that people might have, people outside of financial aid might have no clue what we're talking about. So I want to give you that overview so you know what to expect when you're reviewing all your packages. So what is the cost of attendance? You're going to hear this a lot. Oh, your COA, your cost of attendance. We can't go over that. Well, what does that mean? Well, the cost of attendance is comprised of 2 different components. You have your direct cost, which would be things like tuition, fees, room and board if you're living on campus, maybe books if schools charge that. Anything that's charged directly to you, the student, on your student account. And then you have your indirect costs. So those would be things like transportation costs, personal costs, books and supplies if those aren't charged directly, and if you're a commuter, then a room and board cost. So those things combine into the cost of attendance. And It can vary widely from college to college because each college is different. A state school has a different tuition, set than a private college. So the cost of attendance from school to school will not be the same. Again, it's very individualized based upon the school and based upon your circumstances, whether you're living on campus or off or commuting from home. I did touch briefly on before when we were going over the student aid report is the expected family contribution, or the EFC. This is a very important number for you to remember because you're going to hear this a lot. So this is really the amount a family can reasonably be expected to contribute. Again, it is a standard calculation that is done based upon the results of the FAFSA. It is again, a standard way that schools will be able to fairly be able to put together financial aid packages for students. It does stay the same regardless of college. So whether you're going to a state school or a private school, or let's say Harvard, that EFC stays the same. That has the two components, the parent contribution and the student contribution, again, based upon all that information you put into the FAFSA. Again, and it's calculated using the application form in a federal formula. One thing I wanted to note on this is that, so even though it's the amount that a family can reasonably be expected to contribute, it does not necessarily mean that that is the amount that you will be, that your balance will be. So in the case that we saw for the student aid report, that EFC was 0. Now, that does not mean that you will owe a 0 balance. At some state schools, potentially, yeah, you might be, because of either Pell Grants or state grants, you might not have a balance if you're commuting from home. But at a private school, you can typically expect that there will be some type of balance. Same thing goes if you have like a 10,000 EFC. That does not necessarily mean that you might owe less than that. You might owe more than that. It really just depends. Each student is very different. That then brings us to financial need. You will hear this a lot. You will hear, oh, that is a need-based award. Oh, you don't have financial need. You have to have this in order to get this specific fund. So what is it? Well, we take your cost of attendance, which again, all those components make up. We reduce minus away your expected family contribution, and that remaining number is your financial need. And this means that schools can package you with need-based aid up to that amount. By federal regulations, we're not allowed to go over award you need-based aid if you don't have financial need. Same thing with the cost of attendance. We are not allowed to award you more aid above and beyond your cost of attendance. That's just federal regulations. We just can't do it. So just things to keep in mind as you start to interact with your financial aid packages and counselors, just so you know what the limits are of financial aid. You will see in your financial aid packages, you have your scholarships, you have your grants. So those are the free money, whether they're merit scholarships that we award here at Niagara, need-based grants, Pell grants from, or federal grants from government, state grants, all those things, free money, don't have to pay that back. Then you have loans and then employment. So loans would either be like federal loans, either in the student's name or the parent's name, private student loans, or which of course loans you have to pay back after graduation, or employment would be either a work-study job on campus or perhaps some other type of student employment on campus. So the first two, scholarships and grants, free money, everybody wants those, of course. Loans, it is considered financial aid, as it is, it is a low interest loan in most cases, helping you out while you're in school. And then employment, you do have to work for that in order to either earn the money or have that money go to your account. The sources that you will find, the providers of that, first, largest one, federal government. They are by far the largest one, just solely based off the fact that you have to file the FAFSA every year in order for to be considered for any aid. But they are the largest source, whether it's Pell Grants, Opportunity Grants, work-study loans, all those come from the federal government. Then you have your states. So New York State, if you are a New York State resident and you attend a New York State school, you would be eligible for, potentially based upon income, the New York State grants. We'll get to those in a little bit. So again, states also provide some support as well. Then private sources, so that would be, if you have like a community foundation, scholarship, or American Legion, Wegmans, anything like that. Same thing goes with employers and civic organizations. All those places that are outside of the institution, outside of the state, outside of the federal government, that you would be able to receive some funds for. So as I said, federal government is the largest source of financial aid, and the aid that they award is primarily on the basis of financial need. So for the most part, the majority of their funds do require some amount of financial need. Otherwise, you would not be eligible for the majority of their grants or scholarships. it must be applied, aid from the federal government must be applied every year using the FAFSA form. So it is an annual process, although you might have been super excited to kind of get the FAFSA done, or will be once it's done for the first time. It is something you have to do every year. The good news is that the renewal process is a lot, doesn't take as much time because, you know, just kind of updating some of the new year information, but the basic information just kind of rolls over from year to year. Some of the most common federal aid programs you will see include the federal Pell Grant. Now, this grant is based up actually just solely based off of your EFC, with your expected family contribution. Currently, if your EFC is about $5,700 or less, you would be eligible for some amount of the Pell Grant. The Pell Grant can range from a couple $100s all the way up to about $6,300 for the year. And that amount can change year to year just based upon the appropriations that are made through the budget process with the federal government. We typically don't find that out until a little bit later. But right now, for this year, the maximum Pell Grant is $6,345 for the year. But again, you're going to see, based upon your EFC, you would see that range. There's also the Teach Grant. This is really for students who are going into the education field. And there are quite a bit of criteria that are attached to this. It is a grant, but you have to, you know, be in certain educational programs. You have to planning on teaching in certain areas throughout the states. They have to meet specific criteria. And if you don't meet all those, that grant does turn back into an unsubsidized loan. So just something to, you know, keep in mind as you are looking potentially into that Teach Grant program. There's the Opportunity Grant Program, another federal program. Now, for this one, you do have to be Pell Grant eligible. But whereas with the Pell Grant, if you're eligible for it, you get it. Like, there is no cutoff on that. It's, you know, if you're eligible for it, you get it. There's no cap on the amount of Pell Grants we can award. The Opportunity Grant, each school has a different amount that they're awarded each year. And here at Niagara, we don't have that much that we are allotted. So even though you might technically be financially eligible for it, you might not see it in your package just because of the limited amount that we do have available. There's the Work Study Program. In this program, students work between 10 to 12 hours per week on campus. And depending upon their situation and the department they're working for. But again, typically 10 to 12 hours per week. And they can either choose to get a paycheck every couple weeks or have a portion of that paycheck go towards their student account to help pay down their balance. You then have subsidized and unsubsidized loans. These, again, have to file the FAFSA in order to be considered eligible. Subsidized is considered a need-based loan through the government. Again, you do have to have that financial need component in order to be eligible. And the unsubsidized, it's not considered need-based. So the difference is that the subsidized, the government actually pays the interest for the students while they're in school on that loan, whereas the unsubsidized, they are not paying it, so interest is accumulating you know, throughout the life of the loan. Typically, right now, interest is pretty low, 2.75%, due to, of course, everything going on in the world. It has a pretty low interest rate, the lowest I've seen in, you know, since I've been in financial aid. So it definitely is low interest loans. So the interest right now isn't too much. You know, I like to think of it as a, you know, a tank of gas every 3 to 4 months is, you know, the amount of interest that is being added onto that. And then, so those two, the subsidized and unsubsidized, are actually in the student's name. The FAFSA is their application for those loans. The next one is a PLUS loan. This is a federal loan, but it is in the parent's name. It's called the Parent Plus loan. So this is something that parents can take out on behalf of their students in order to help, you know, pay off that remaining balance, or, you know, for extras that they might need throughout the year. So this is something to consider as well. And this is actually where those federal student ID numbers come in. Although you needed, you know, just one to sign off on the FAFSA, you know, both parents want to, you know, maybe the other parent wants to apply for this, you would need to get your own FSA ID. So those are the programs. Now on to states. It is, as I said before, in New York State, if you're a New York State resident attending a New York State school, you can apply for the TAP app. Well, there's several awards that they have, but the largest program would be the Tuition Assistance Program, or the TAP grant. This one does have an income cutoff. So it is based upon New York State net taxable income for 2019. If between the parent and the student, your New York State net taxable income is $80,000 or less, then you would be eligible for, again, a range of the TAP grant. So that ranges from $500 all the way up to about $5,165 for the year. So again, that's based upon income. So We do recommend that you apply for the state application as soon as you can. One of the nice things is that when you're filling out the FAFSA, at the very end, after you hit complete on the FAFSA, say congratulations, you completed your form, would you like to complete your state application? I recommend saying yes to this, because if you say yes, it will actually transfer the information that you've already provided in the FAFSA into your New York State application. I recommend doing this. Again, it just saves on time. It transfers all the information over. You don't have to really fill out most, there'll be some additional questions, but not a ton. So again, I do recommend doing that, at that time of the FAFSA. Now, there are cases, of course, where the link doesn't seem to work all the time, maybe based upon the browser you're using, or it bombs out, or you just don't have time, or you forget. Not a problem. You would just have to then wait about a week for the FAFSA to process, and then go directly to the New York State site, and that is hesc.ny.gov, is where you go to directly complete your state application. When you are completing the state application, you are only allowed to put in one school, whereas the FAFSA, you're allowed up to 10. The state application, you're only allowed one. So if you do the transfer from the FAFSA to the TAP application, it will actually take the first school that you listed on the FAFSA and plop that into the state application, as long as it's a New York State school. And then if you're filling it out, manually without having it being transferred, you can only list one school. So again, important to keep track of the schools you're listing on here, because if you don't end up going to that school, you come to Niagara and we're not listed on your TAP application, you'll have to go back and fix that and update our school code. The schools can do it as well, but it takes a little bit of time for us to process that through. You cannot take the New York State grant out of New York State, so you do have to be attending a school in New York State. There are also some merit scholarships for New York State that can be applied for as well. I know at the moment some of those are on new selections for those are on hold just because of the budget concerns with COVID. But again, it doesn't hurt to apply for that. There's also the Excelsior program for if you're going to a state school, or the Enhanced Tuition Award if you're going potentially to a private school. But there's a lot of criteria that's involved in that. I do recommend checking out the state website for FAQs on the Excelsior and ETA programs to see what those requirements would be. And then the last thing I want to touch on as far as the sources are private sources and employers. So I mentioned, there's foundations available. The Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo, there's one for Rochester, there's one for Syracuse. Those are great resources. I have seen students come in from the Buffalo one that have received either anywhere from $500 up to $6,000 per year. I mean, it's great that students are getting these. So I highly recommend, taking the time to write those essays, to do those applications. I certainly get it. When I was a senior in high school, that was the last thing I was thinking about. I had so many other things I wanted to do and that I was doing with my friends and whatnot. But now that I'm on the other side of the house and I see how much money is coming in from these outside sources, I'm shooting, I can't believe that I didn't do this, because it's great how much money some students are getting. So it's definitely worth looking into. Of course, there's national websites. There's like fastweb.com and scholarships.com that you can look for private sources. But I recommend looking at local. There's not as much demand, of course, and there's a lot of local scholarships. Please check with your, high school guidance counselors. I know many schools have that are scholarships that are specific just to that high school. So it doesn't hurt to look around. Please start researching these early. So what I mean by early is pretty much now, the fall time. Research them now, see when they open. A lot of scholarship applications open between like January and they're due March or April. So it gives you a couple months to do that. Also check with employers. I know Wegmans, they have scholarships for students going to college. Some other companies have them as well. So it doesn't hurt to ask, and it doesn't hurt to start searching for those. Here at Niagara, we also have our own endowed scholarship search page. So at Niagara, we have over 200 endowed scholarships, meaning, these are scholarships that donors over the years have created, and some of them have very specific criteria. So we created a search engine page that you can go on. As long as you're an accepted student, well, anyone can actually look at all of them and see all the different ones we have on our website. But as long as you're an accepted student, you have the ability to actually apply for these. So starting January 1st, the applications will be open for the 21-22 year. So again, start looking at those now, and then once January 1st hits, we'll actually send out email reminders to students. But you can go ahead and start applying for those endowed scholarships that are available through Niagara. And also on that site, we have some local ones like the Community Foundation of Greater Buffalo. Some local scholarships that are specific to the Western New York area are listed on our site as well. So it does not hurt to start looking for all those things early, and to kind of start getting those essays together. If it requires an essay, if if the topic is pretty general, use the same essay, mix it up a little bit. Make sure you're using the correct. If you're submitting it to a school or something, you're using the correct school or foundation. But again, try to do as much as you can to get those additional funds. Okay. Last thing I wanted to touch on is special conditions and appeals. Now, the FAFSA information, as we have stated before, is based upon the 2019 tax year. Well, even without COVID, things can change. But especially right now, we know that 2020 has, so many people have seen so many changes in the 2020 year, whether it is a reduction in income or a loss of a job, or perhaps, a separation or a divorce. All these things, of course, can happen in a normal year, but in 2020, it has just been expanded, of course. So if income or situation has changed since 2019, please contact us or whatever school you're applying to, because we might be able to perform what we call professional judgment. So if you're let's say in a case of you lost a job, we will, and your income is no longer what it was in 2019. We will be able to potentially take that into consideration. We'll open up what we call like a special circumstance form. All of our stuff is online through a portal. You'll be asked to provide, probably current pay stubs, or again, it all just depends on when everything took place, but current pay stubs and projection of what you'll earn from now until the end of the year, unemployment benefits, all those things. So you will have to be prepared to submit a lot of potentially a good amount of documentation to the schools in order for us to do this. But we certainly know that things happen, and we are definitely, willing and here to help you through that process. I do recommend, if you're applying to a lot of schools, that I would only maybe focus on the ones you're truly interested in, to do a special circumstance or professional judgment ask, only because of the amount of sometimes the amount of paperwork you have to go through for this. You might not want to do it on all 10 schools you're applying to, but just the top 3 or 4 that you are truly interested in. And then sometimes, maybe nothing has changed. But you just know that you are still going to need some additional resources in order to be able to attend the school that you're looking at. So if that's the case, reach out to my office, reach out to Niagara or to the other schools you're applying to ask for additional funds. That is something that we know is a possibility, that students might need additional funds depending upon whether something changed or not. So, the worst that can happen is that school says no, but, we definitely do our best to work with students and parents and to make, especially a private education affordable and accessible for all students. So don't hesitate to reach out. I do recommend that you wait until you get your financial aid package in the mail to review it, or, again, through the portal. But once you receive your financial aid package, then submit the appeal, so that we know what you're basing that on. If you're comparing us to other schools, we will ask you for copies of their award letters as well. So maybe wait until you have all those things in place before you submit that appeal, or just know that we will potentially ask for additional documentation as a follow-up for that. But again, don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions about either the special conditions process or the appeal process. Last thing I wanted to leave you with is really, I call it the financial aid award letter worksheet. It is a comparison tool. I highly recommend you use this, and we will actually post this. It will be on our website. It's this brochure, and this is actually the last page of it that you can use. So, you have 4 schools here. You can copy it if you need to make more, but you're going to list each school. Once you have that financial aid package, you want to put down, okay, what are my actual charges? What are my tuition, my fees, my room and board from living on campus? Okay, now what are the, grants and scholarships that I've received? What are the loans that I've received or work study? And also, the loans. So you're gonna want to put all of those things into here and really do the math and really break it down to, okay, here are my actual charges. Here are my, grants and scholarships. Here are my loans. And this remaining amount is the total amount that I would still be expected to, as my balance. You're going to compare that from school to school. And it's so important to do this because, we've seen many cases where a student, might receive a really large financial aid package. Maybe let's say like, I don't know, $30,000 or something. But that school actually costs $60,000. So you still owe that $30,000. And or maybe, you're offered $20,000 at another school, but they only cost $30,000. So you only owe 10,000 there. It's really important to do this breakdown in this map because it is very easily, especially when this is all a new process to you, to kind of get overwhelmed by seeing those large numbers on that, financial aid package, but not really realizing that maybe their costs are a little bit higher. So I highly encourage you, once you start getting all those financial aid packages in the mail and in your portals, do the breakdown. This will also help when you are trying to do a financial aid appeal, so you have those, numbers if you're trying to compare one school to another and trying to receive some additional aid. This will help in that process as well. Okay, that does it. I know that was a ton of information in a short amount of time. So please know that my office is here for any questions you might have, whether it's about the FAFSA form, questions on there, about the financial aid process, about anything specific to Niagara. We are here to help. And honestly, even if it's something that has nothing to do with Niagara and you just have a question about on the FAFSA or whatnot, please reach out to us, to my office. We are here to help. Again, that is my email, kkosis@niagara.edu. You can also email our main email at finaid, FINAID, @niagara.edu. And of course, our number 286-8686. Will connect you with someone on my team that will be able to, again, either help you with your question there, set up an appointment. We're doing a lot of Zoom appointments, of course, or Google Meets. So again, we are able to meet with you virtually to be able to go through that process. So please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for if you watch this entire thing, thank you so much for getting through it. And again, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. Have a good day.